Ta-da.
I'm with you sitting down. Good evening. Let everyone know that we are starting at 6:30, and we're going to go into executive session for collective bargaining strategy purposes. So I'd entertain a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A, Clause 3, to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, since an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the board, and to convene an open session thereafter.
Second.
Second, Mr. McCurdy.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Knox, aye. Executive session. Thank you. We'll be back around 7 o'clock. Couple things that could hold us up.
Throw a switch and the lights are all going to shut off.
It's still negotiating basically.
Welcome back to our meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Monday, October 20th, 2014. Madam Clerk, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Please be advised that the Governor Deval L. Patrick has ordered the United States flags and the flag of the Commonwealth to be lowered, or was lowered to half-staff at all state buildings sunrise to sunset on Thursday, October 9th, in honor of Special Technician Sergeant Patrick A. Rudd, 32, Massachusetts Air National Guard, 104th Fighter Wing of Holyoke, who died October 3rd, 2014, and on October 22nd, in honor of Special Sergeant Nicholas A. Outhus, 26, United States Army of Parma, who died on October 10th, 2014. Thank you. On the agenda for tonight, for those who were watching earlier, we had an executive session at 6:30 dealing with the collective bargaining strategy. 8 o'clock, we'll be reading the mail. At 7, we'll have input, both public and members' input, followed by town board appointments. I think we have one at 7:10. 7:20 in that time range requests a notice of intent to sell Mass General Law 61A for property at 36 Tehadawin Road, map 34, block 27. And finance, adopt policy amendments for OPED, followed by the Park and Recreation will be here to talk about the Castle in the Trees playground update. 8 o'clock, establish a Littleton Common Committee. 8:20, Town Administrator for Finance and Budget. We'll be talking about November 12th special town meeting recommendations of Article 6, the appropriation to the Community Preservation Fund Recreation Reserve. Article 7, turf field design, which is a voter petition. Article 8, a tax increment financing for 3 distribution circle. And November 4th, Part B, the special town election warrant, followed after that with consent business minutes approval. Town Administrator, mail.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a few items in the mail packet this week. First was a letter of congratulations along with a certificate that went to Littleton High School, which was this year recognized as a 2014 commendation school by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for their high progress that they made this year. And this is second or third year in a row that they've received that commendation, so that's continued great work. Next, I've included just the table of contents in a document that you received electronically, and that is a draft of the housing production plan that has been prepared by our consultants at MAPC. They delivered it to the planning board for their review a couple of weeks ago. The MAPC will be returning to the planning board on November 6th, and then they will be coming here on November 17th. The hope is to finalize the housing production plan update and file it, submit it to the state for their approval. The document does require approval by a planning board and a board of selectmen. So we've had a couple of public forums with the housing committee, but at this point, the report document itself requires adoption by planning board and board of selectmen. Next, on the matter of housing, on Thursday, October 30th, at 7 p.m. at the Littleton Police Department Community Room. We will be hosting another MAPC housing project, this one involving Housing Authority collaboration, that our Housing Authority and a number of authorities in neighboring communities have been meeting with the MAPC consultants over the last number of months, and we're sort of got an all-hands meeting where we're inviting Housing Authority members, town officials. The Board of Selectmen is welcome to attend, and I'm aware that there will be a number of selectmen from many of our neighboring communities who will be here that night, along with Housing Authority members, to look at ways that towns can better coordinate with their own housing authority, and how housing authorities can coordinate across boundaries. And so we're glad to be hosting that discussion. Next is a report, also from MAPC. This one is on Littleton commuter rail parking. Some months ago, we had commissioned our regional planning agency to prepare a preliminary feasibility study looking at the question of whether and how additional parking could be had for the commuter rail station in Littleton, which right now is over 100% capacity. It's been that way almost since the day it opened. The 200 spaces there are routinely all used during the commuting day, and any number from half a dozen to dozens.
Maybe 20% every
Yeah.
day.
So there's the need for additional parking. Last time out, the town itself did not commit any of its, we have never committed any of our own funds for parking. We're not, I'm not asking or recommending that we do that this time. The parking that was acquired by the MBTA through a $2 million grant that they were able to get from another state agency, I think sets the model for what we could shoot for this time, and that is be supportive of the MBTA's efforts and the state's efforts in finding funding to add parking spaces where they're needed. So that's the role we played last time to help get that grant funding, and we can continue to do that again. And actually, we'll get the opportunity as soon as this Wednesday morning, when we will have the general manager of the MBTA and Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas, Senator Jamie Eldridge, and other officials, including business leaders and others from our neighboring communities, where the MBTA and Mass DOT are finally making an official announcement of the new schedule for Littleton Station. Press release is going out for Wednesday. There's going to be an announcement where they will share the information with the world that Littleton now has what we call South Acton schedule, that it's 4 more trips a day in both directions. All the trains on the Fitchburg line for commuter rail now come to Littleton. The first reverse commute of the day arrives an hour earlier in the morning than it used to. So this is a chance to tout that. It's a chance to ask our state and federal legislators to help, continue to build on what they've given us thus far. We've got the capital improvements in place for commuter rail. What we need is expanded service, operational enhancements, and the first phase of that is in place already with the new schedule that went into effect in August. We're looking next towards January of 2016, when all the capital improvements along the Fitchburg line are completed. That'll be a next opportunity for an even better operating schedule for Littleton. So that's that'll be a chance to pitch. Next, I've included in the packet something which I'd suggest we schedule a future agenda item on for discussion, but it's a letter from National Grid confirming that they have 3 customers in Littleton. And while that may not seem like a big deal, it actually is at one level. That back in 2012, the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources issued a ruling that for municipal light plant communities like Littleton, and there are 40, odd MLP communities in the Commonwealth, that in order for any of those MLP communities to be eligible to become green communities, certified under the Green Communities Program, which then allows you to access all sorts of grant funding that comes from various sources, that in order for a municipal light plant community to even be eligible to apply, you first had to have your Board of Electric Light Commissioners adopt a surcharge that's required by the statute called the Renewable Energy Trust Surcharge. Well, our board looked at that and declined to adopt the surcharge. In fact, only 5 of the 40-odd MLP communities had ever adopted the surcharge. But in 2012, the state Green Communities Program issued a ruling that if a community was served both by a municipal light department and an investor-owned utility, then you could come in as and stand in the line for green communities as in the investor-owned line without adopting the surcharge if you had both. Well, we found 3. There are 3 residences on Beaver Brook Road in Littleton, which are customers of National Grid, and the state has confirmed that that's enough to pre-qualify Littleton if it wanted to pursue green community certification. Concord is already, which is a municipal light plant community and has, I think, a couple of streets of investor-owned utility customers. Concord is already a green, certified as a green community. The opportunity comes up once a year. This month is this year's opportunity, so if Littleton wanted to look at that, we'd really be aiming at a year from now, looking at October of 2015 as that funding round.
Have we let the Sustainability Committee know that this is going on?
Yeah, I met with them last month to say that this was in the works, that I said that, and they're very enthusiastic. They would love to spearhead the effort. They've already reached out to the Green Communities Division Regional Coordinator, and we will be looking to set up a meeting of that group. We may want to set up a working group. I think it'd be important to involve the electric light department in this if we were to pursue it. There are a lot of steps that are involved. We want to weigh each one and see if it's right for Littleton, but it's an opportunity that nearly all of our neighbors have taken advantage of. Acton, Westford, just 123 of the 351 cities and towns are already certified. But we're now, and frankly, it's thanks to the help of our own general manager, Scott Edwards at Littleton Electric Light, that we have that opportunity. He helped track down the information and was very helpful in bringing us to this point. So it's an opportunity that we can look at to explore in the future.
Once you get certified, do you have to get recertified every year, or are you
No,
good to go?
once you're in, you're in, but they do, there are standards that you need to continue to meet. If you have to adopt, you have to do your energy, come up with an energy reduction plan. It has benchmarks for achieving that over time, and so I think if it were something that we were going to do, we'd have to make a commitment that we were going to keep up with it.
I think it's fantastic. I'm really pleased to hear that we pre-qualify. And like you said, we have to weigh things, but I think it'd be great to see us a green community. I was telling Keith last week, I saw Al Gore speak about the environment, and it was one of the most inspirational speeches I've seen, so I'm really passionate about this right now. So let's get to it. Let's get to
Very
it.
good. So, and I've shared that, I've shared with the chair of the Sustainability Committee, Erin Healy, that I've had one selectman express her interest in the project, and that if we set up an exploratory meeting, I'd want to be able to do it around your schedule.
Thank you very
So
much.
we'll do
Appreciate
that.
that.
Keith, you'll be happy to have someone on the board that's
I know, well, it was,
elderly
it
interested.
was, I've been holding my breath for 6 years now. Now I can exhale.
Funny, you haven't been, well, no, I won't get into it. I won't get into it.
Although there was no indication in the last 10 minutes of any breath being withheld. All right, so that is it in the packet.
All right,
Thank you.
I'll open it to a public input by anyone right now. If not, board, most everything.
Nothing for me this weekend.
I just have one issue that has come up recently. It involves my 88-year-old mom, just to let folks know that this stuff is going on. She's been getting these phone calls from a credit card company, and it's coming up as my phone number, and it says James F. Carr. So I was able to answer that call today, and it ended up by the guy on the other end telling me to F off and hanging up. So it's, just be aware of it. I know, I've seen a couple emails out from the PD, but folks in town, especially if you have elderly parents or folks that, your neighbors, just let them know that it's a hoax and people are just trying to get your money. So it's pretty disturbing, actually. I wish I could call them back. Or reach through the phone.
Mr. McCurdy?
I have nothing.
We'll move right on then. Town Board Appointments, Economic Development Committee, established in 2013. In the meantime, we've had 2 resignations, one of Hillary Rostas-Watt and Rob Bronson. And we had put out, looking for people who want to volunteer, and we have one application from John Bergeron. And judging by the resume that he put in, I would think this would be an easy appointment.
Come on up, John. Come on up. Keep calm and Bergeron on.
The hot seat? All right.
Anything you want to say, or you're interested in it? And
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for taking the opportunity to, or giving me the opportunity to speak to you and hear from you. Through some of the 40B stuff, I started to get a little bit involved, started to take a little bit more interest about what's going on in town. I thought this would be a good opportunity to try and use some of the skills that I've developed along the way to try and help the town and be a more active contributing member to Littleton. We've been here for 8 years now, so it's probably about time. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have. For my resume, I've done a lot of business work, return on investment. I'm an engineer, so very analytical by nature, and pretty, I like to think pretty organized, although I'm not sure my wife would always agree with me. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any and all questions you may have.
Board?
None for me. It's a fantastic person.
What is Six Sigma?
Six Sigma? So it's a continuous.
We don't have all night.
Come on now. You think Mr. Bergman was a little longer.
Again and again and again.
No, so it's a continuous improvement methodology that's based off of a statistical analysis. So Six Sigma actually measures the amount of variation. It's a long-winded discussion, but if you're building parts and you've got to create 100 that go into an assembly, sometimes you might get 98, sometimes you might get 102. It's that variation that you're trying to get to, and you're trying to get right to 100. It's the sigma represents the breadth of which you actually supply 100 parts. So it could be anywhere from 70 to 130, but on average, it's 100. So the idea is, how do I only deliver 100 parts every single time, each time? So I've got a repeatable and reproducible process. That's the whole idea behind it.
That's a good explanation. I'm black belt certified as well. for HP.
What's that?
I'm black belt certified as well. for HP.
I'm not black belt certified.
That's confusing.
Well, thank you very much for stepping forward.
Sure.
We appreciate it.
Yes, I am.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint John Bergeron to an indefinite term. Did you know that?
No.
Now you do.
On the Economic Development Committee.
It's moved in second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
You're hired.
Yeah, definitely, you heard that.
Oh, I know.
Okay. 5A, right of first refusal, Chapter 61A, that deals with 36 to Hadamon Road. I know Attorney Sherry Gould said that she could not attend, but in her place, my friend and colleague, Cheryl Colley, is here to answer any questions about it. And I understand it's like a 10-acre parcel of land that will be divided into a house and 2 lots, and I'll let you take it from there.
It's actually 13 acres. It has been, had an A&R approved by the, well, I guess they don't approve it, but an A&R presented to the planning board, which has been accepted. And it will be 2 lots and the house.
The property has been under Chapter 61A agricultural assessment, and one of the conditions of that program is that in the event that the property's sold, that the town has a right of first refusal to match a bona fide offer. In this case, the bona fide offer is for $1 million, which, I will tell you frankly, we don't have.
And it doesn't make, it's not a piece of land that would make, unfortunately, because I live next door, and I would absolutely love this to become conservation land. But it is not a piece of land that makes sense for the town to spend $1 million on. It has limited access, it is a hillside, it couldn't be ball fields.
It is a procedural step that while we do have 120 days to exercise the right of first refusal, if the town is free to make a determination well before the end of that deadline, if we're not interested in exercising it. Twice in the last year or so, the board had voted not to exercise its right under a couple of other lots. In those cases, similarly, it was for sums of money that we did not have for, if the right, I have to say, if the right piece of property came along that we would, and was high on the list of those that we wanted to acquire, we would stop what we're doing, we'd call a special town meeting and let the voters take advantage of it, but we do not have that.
What was the property? Was it the old tree farm? Was that, what is it?
Well, yeah, it had a tree farm component for the agricultural. It's a big old fieldstone Victorian like mine.
I know where it is. But is that why it was
Scorch's house.
61A?
What? Part of the 10 acres of it was in 61. You have to keep some land with the house. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm not exactly familiar with exactly what the rules are. I think you have to keep like 4 or 5 acres or 3 acres with the house, and then that gets taxed at the regular rate. But then the additional land, the 10 acres, could be then taxed at a lower agricultural rate as long as you harvested it or treated it as agricultural land. When you take it out of 61A, my understanding is you have to pay the difference in the taxes back for the last 5 years. And in this case, it's about just under $5,200 that will have to be paid to take it out of 61A. The house and property is owned by Dr. B. Smith, a very lovely elderly couple who have gone into a retirement community, and they'd rather not be worried about the house through the winter.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote not to exercise the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, Section 14, to acquire 13.6 acre property at 36 Adawan Road, Assessors Map U34-27-0, for a bona fide offer of $1 million.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Out of order. The established Littleton Common Committee, is that something I should have put a resume in for?
Well, you
No.
can, we just,
We haven't established.
We haven't
it.
established it yet.
Established
Not
it.
established yet.
Oh.
Wait till 8 o'clock and it'll be established. Then you can put it in a month, we'll post it for a month.
Watch out, you might get an indefinite term.
Okay, 5D, other post-employment benefits, which we talked about, I believe, on August 23rd. And our
Yeah.
policy says we have to bring it back.
Yeah,
The final vote.
right, at a previous meeting, the board had the policy amendments introduced, and by your procedure, that we would introduce it at one meeting and then adopt it at the next.
It was also vetted through the working group for fiscal policies.
Right.
Yes.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt the proposed amendments to the policy on other post-employment benefits, OPEB, trust investments, as recommended by the Financial Policy Working Group and as introduced by the Board of Selectmen meeting on October 6, 2014.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Can I just ask one quick question about that?
You sure can.
How are other towns doing, or how are we doing relative to other towns in managing this?
OPEB.
in trying to reach our funding on the liability side?
Well, I mean, everybody's handling, all the towns have a huge liability, if you will, in the same manner. Where do we stand? Are we more aggressive? Are we more comprehensive? Are we in the middle of the road? Are we behind in how towns are managing that?
I think of the majority of the towns, we're ahead of the curve as far as trying to put money aside. If you look at some of the other AAA communities, for example, they're probably ahead of where we are.
The other AAA communities are.
Yeah, well, there's just a handful.
Okay.
But if you look at all 351 cities and towns,
Has there been much discussion?
we're ahead of the curve on that.
Has there been much discussion about becoming more aggressive with managing it?
That's something that we're trying to write into the policies, using some more of the free cash to allocate it. Right now, we do a 10% increase over the previous year's appropriation. And there's some provisions to put extra if it falls through on our little chart of free cash, one-time revenue sources.
Thank you.
That's the key, is one-time revenue sources, you don't want to build it in.
Moving on to item number 6, ask the Park and Rec Commission to come in and talk about Castle and Trees equipment update and the Children's Fund. I know that you did a survey, you call it a survey that was accomplished, and I guess it comes down to, at this point, I know that I've had certain people talk to me about the inability of bringing their children to any playground, so there exists right now a case of if we take it away right now, there's nothing there, or do we take it out and start the fundraising? I know there's a lot of problems with old equipment, but Kate, would you like to speak to it? Or Keith, do you want to start it?
Well, I'll just remind us that the Park and Rec Commission met with the Board of Selectmen some months ago, and we agreed that we'd meet again in the fall to try to come to a meeting of the minds on what the disposition of the old, call it the old playground equipment at 300 King Street would be. One of the issues that have been on the table was the fact that the Littleton Children's Fund was seeking to donate the existing playground equipment to the town, which would then require, under our procedures, the Park and Rec Commission to accept that donation and the Board of Selectmen to approve the acceptance. So that was one issue. We had taken care of the matter a year ago of the donation of the new, call it the new playground for Aiden's playground equipment that had been accepted by both of the boards. One of the issues that has come up in the meantime is really what the future prognosis is of the old playground equipment. Should it be Is it in a condition where it can stay there from a safety standpoint or from a liability standpoint? Should there be plans in place to replace it? And if so, would that be through town funds or private fundraising or some combination? And if there were to be a policy decision that the playground equipment ought to be upgraded and replaced, what do we do with the old playground in the meantime? One of the issues that had been brought to my attention was that at least while the contractor is out at 300 King Street doing work, the opportunity existed for a particular price of under $10,000, that if there were agreement that the existing playground was unsafe or should be demolished, that the opportunity would exist to have that current contractor do it for under $10,000. I met with Kate and with Sarah from the Littleton Children's Fund a week or so ago, and one of the things I was hearing is that there actually haven't been any big high-level policy discussions about what the future of that playground equipment would be. So that was certainly something that we could talk about tonight. Is the vision to just have the existing playground stay there? Is the vision to have it replaced, particularly if there could be private fundraising going on? Those are issues that, in the first instance, are the purview of the Park and Rec Commission. And if there were general agreement about what the future of the playground equipment should be, then is there a more immediate answer to what do you do with the existing equipment? Do you leave it up until there's a new playground that all the fundraising has been done for, or do you take advantage of the opportunity with the current contractor there and take down the old equipment? We haven't had that discussion as a group. This is an opportunity, this is a chance tonight to have a discussion about, do you leave it there and replace it, or what do you do in the meantime?
Well, how do we stand insurance-wise as far as our insurer? Are we covered?
We're covered. I mean, technically, we're covered. Our insurance provider will continue to provide insurance and defend against if there are claims on the property. The larger issue, though, that they're advising us is that even though they'll insure us, they would want to make sure that we're avoiding injuries. And that we're taking steps to, avoid claims from happening in the first place. And that there are a number of steps involved in that. You could undertake, and maybe Bonnie could just go through what some of the feedback were for, having a more intensive analysis done of the equipment, making determinations of what's safe, what's not safe, cordon off what isn't safe.
Yeah, I mean, they did, Maya did state that they would provide us with coverage and defend us against any claims. But he said, well, we do know that there are some issues. We should be taking some action to try and mitigate those issues. So either if the study that we had requires additional review to do something like that, if there are areas of the playground that should be cordoned off or closed off, we should be looking at doing that. If the facility needs to be removed, we should be looking at that. But the bottom line, he did state that we are covered. It's more of making sure that, there isn't an injury taking place.
I guess the next question is, like, the Park and Rec never took control over that part of the playground, right? Of the equipment itself?
No, we've never taken control over it. I did an audit in 2010 of the equipment, and it's non-compliant, and that's pretty much where that ended. We discussed it in conjunction with moving forward with 300 King Street, but at the time, that structure was maintained by the Littleton Children's Fund. And so it wasn't part of the overall plan. As far as sectioning off pieces of the old portion, it's the whole structure, because what has happened over, the last several years, or at least since 1990, is that kind of pressure-treated wood, number one, isn't used anymore. So that's the first issue. And the other glaring issue is that the current structure has stuff called entrapment hazards, which is basically a limb can go in, but it can't easily get out if not in the same fashion. So if you're a toddler and you put your hand through 2 rungs and you turn your hand 90 degrees, you can't extract that. There's quite a few of those for wrists, for legs, and there's quite a few head entrapments. But there are many. I mean, there's pros and cons to both. Obviously, you don't want anyone to have any entrapments, but there's lots of playgrounds in our area that have things like that. But people are starting to kind of take a look at it, because nothing has happened, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. And when you do an audit, you kind of look at the severity, and I think you can read Nancy's kind of pre-audit, visual inspection. You kind of look at the severities, and so when you go in to do an audit and you find these levels, including, the material that it's made from, the safety surfacing, which is pea stone, and the entrapment hazards, you wouldn't really spend the time to go on to talk about all the other, non-life threatening, because you already know that you're not compliant with those. So our audit has stopped. I mean, I can do a full audit. It's 8 to 10 hours worth of time, but you're gonna come to the same conclusion, that it's not compliant and it can't be brought up to code. But that's a matter of policy decision. I mean, we clearly are covered. It's grandfathered, I guess, through the insurance company. I'm weary personally, just from the Park and Rec standpoint, of taking it down without having something up, especially because we've just hopefully are going to be bringing the 300 King Street site online in the spring, and that's a huge draw to it. So, and we clearly do not have a funding source in place right now.
I guess that would be my next concern too, is that if it is taken down, what else is there for kids that age where do they go, where do parents bring them? If there was something else in town, well, what's it gonna cost to have it replaced, and how are we gonna fund that? I guess there's some questions there that.
So the only other playground that is not on school property will be the playground at Long Lake. And that brings about a whole another scope of issues, because if you're shuffling more people to use the playground at Long Lake, there's maintenance costs associated with that. In addition, it's a much smaller playground that's outlined for 15 to 20 kids between the ages of 5 and 12, versus what's currently at the older Castle in the Trees is more for, at least 40. I think you could probably get away with about 50 for the same age group. So it's like apples to oranges. And total replacement, including the safety surfacing and installation done by professionals, is about $210,000 to $250,000 for a playground of that same scale. If you want to accommodate 45-ish children between the ages of 5 and 12.
And when do we expect Long Lake to be back up again?
Well, the check's in the mail. We received a grant, and I signed the paperwork for it last week. We sent them our matching portion. So if it stays mild, and we can work on getting it installed, then hopefully in the next month. If not, it would have to be after, the snow melts and we're into early spring. But it certainly would be back by optimum playground weather.
Any other questions from the board, Rick?
How much is this used now? Do you have any ideas, does anybody have any idea how often it's being used? And I guess we probably don't have good statistics of whether there have been any injuries there so far.
If there have been any injuries, they haven't been reported to us. And I would say that it's probably one of the most widely used areas in town and in the surrounding towns, not just from residents, but non-residents the same.
Would this qualify for use of CPA funds?
Sure.
We kind of used up our pull in that particular fund.
They told you not to come back for 300 King Street anyway.
Yeah.
This will be 300.
And 300A, if you'd like to have it on a different address, but I don't think that would be an easy sell, because when we went back to complete, or to get to at least this part of the 300 King Street overall project, it was with the idea that anything to be done to the property outside of this was going to be either through the town or some other means. That doesn't mean I can't put it in an application, it's just that I'd have a better shot hitting the lottery.
I think we're here to discuss the issue, and I don't think, if we want to do that, I think the Board of Selectmen ought to be part and parcel to that and join in, if that's the course we want to make. And I think we want to have a playground facility. The other question I have is assessing whether there's a need to immediately take it down or a need to immediately start planning for replacement. And
Or both. Both.
or both, but, and then if we do that, I think we have to be on board, the finance committee has to be on board, we have to look at whether there's gonna be fundraising to do it. But seeing that there was an awful lot of fundraising that was done for the improvements that are done now, we may be challenged there. But I guess my point is, I think it's an asset to the community. I think it's obvious that it's out of code because it's so old. And the day after you build it and start people using it, it will fall out of code at any point after that. So I think we should find a way to collaborate and prioritize this somehow for replacement. It doesn't sound like there's an alternative.
I think we probably all agree on that, but I guess it comes down to, we're not gonna open it up to the public, because there's people here that are concerned about it, but do we take it down because we have a company there right now that will take it down and then there's nothing, or do we leave it up until we have enough financing so we can build something right away? I guess that's it. And before I open it up, for the park and rec, would you rather see it, I'll put you on the spot, but would you rather see it up for now until there's enough funds to replace it and put a new one up, or?
Yeah, we had, at our meeting last Tuesday, we voted to keep it up and to build in the cost for replacement, the demolition is part of replacement.
Anything else from the board, because I do want to. Anyone from the audience would like to speak on this? Mr. Trent.
I'd just like to say, Kate says it's non-compliant in today's standards and stuff like that. This building is compliant. They don't just take it down. You get a plan to rebuild it and then go. You don't just take it down, so.
Anyone else?
I haven't heard any discussion about another plan.
Just identify.
I'm sorry, Byron Rupp. What about modifications to reduce the risk for entrapment? I'm a father of 2 young boys who really enjoy that park. It's within walking distance of our home. when we have outsiders come to visit, they always want to go there with their, my family, with their kids. And, hearing talk of it getting taken down really makes me sick, because it's really a unique structure. It's a place for kids to really explore and enjoy themselves. You mentioned pea gravel. I'm not up on all the codes and all the safety stuff. I don't know how many kids have been hurt on it, but obviously, I'm sure we would know if there has been, repetitive injuries on the structure. There's got to be an option somewhere in the middle to, modify it, to extend its usable life. It's a wood structure. It's eventually going to become structurally unsound. It seems solid to me right now. There's got to be another option. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, the Keystone issue is resolvable. It's the other things like the
Well, it's made of a material that is not compliant anymore. It's made of a specific type of.
Sure. But can it be sealed? Are there products that could effectively reduce the, I suppose it's arsenic, that's the hazard.
Right.
Is there sealant? There's polymers, there's all sorts of materials on the market now that could potentially be used to seal it for a fraction of the cost of demo or rebuild. Have those options been explored? That's my only question.
Well, they've been some of the reports we have, things like that are mentioned. So we're at the stage now, just taking input, just like you said, and where we go from here.
Cheryl Cowley. It is a very important, very heavily used playground in town. And I show people Littleton, it's one of the places I take them. So we don't have anything else like it here. It'd be nice if we could leave it up until we could afford to replace it. And maybe sealing it sounds like an excellent idea.
Well, it is sealed.
Is that?
Yeah.
There we go.
So really, is the risk like a kid gets splinters or chews on it or something? Is that like the pathway to exposure?
Yeah, that general wear, the harsh weather, if there were tree limbs or anything like that to kind of hit it and nick it, it's.
I understand that.
Just to identify yourself, please.
Well, I'm sorry, Jenny Cameron. I understand that, the decision isn't made to repair or replace it. But I'd like to just mention that if it is up for replacement, that the Children's Fund and the community at large have a large say in the new playground, because while the new one at Long Lake, I saw a drawing of it, it looks really fun. There's something really special about our Castle in the Trees. It's not like the new playgrounds. There are still new playgrounds being built that are a lot like Castle in the Trees, but they aren't around here. And it's kind of one of Littleton's little treasures. And I hope that it's not replaced by one of the big brightly colored plastic coated playgrounds, and rather one that sort of, Castle in the Trees, you feel like you're in the trees when you're in this big wood structure. There are materials that look like wood or that are made of wood that it could be replaced with, that would continue sort of this creative, imagination spurring playground that it is now. And I hope that we can continue that sort of treasure in Littleton.
Okay.
We did have someone from one of the companies that's on the state bid list come in, and they took a look at the structure and basically built one that looks similar in color and design. With the problem becomes putting what I thought was, tree elements in it and things like that. I mean, there's a price tag associated with that. So we actually started with a structure that was $485,000. That looks exactly like what's there right now. And you got to tick away at it. So I mean, it definitely is on the commission's radar to have it be something that basically fits like that fits now.
And while I know that those are big numbers, I also think that the community at large is willing to help fundraise and make it possible for us to have what we want.
Sarah Donovan, President of Littleton Children's Fund. We've been saying all along, we're not going anywhere. We're actually having a meeting next week, trying to get more community help. The two of us raised $50,000 to put in Eden's playground. Two of us cannot raise $250,000. We are trying to get community help, but I'm not feeling the support right now from Park and Rec. And if you don't want our help, that's fine, we'll walk away, and, you know. But there is community support behind this. We do want to keep the playground. We do want to replace the playground. Littleton Children's Fund has been saying that for the last year. We want to help. So we all know there's no town funds for this. You know, there's other pressing issues in town. So I don't know. I just think we need to be kept in the loop on things. If you do want our help, and if you don't, then
We want your help. We want your help. We want Castle in the trees. And it's gotta be a grassroots effort, just like you guys started 25 years ago.
it would be great if we could keep it. I mean, we do have a meeting scheduled for next Wednesday. We do plan on fundraising. It would be great, and from everything I've heard from the public is people would like to keep it. We know there's safety issues, but let's keep it until we have something else to put in.
Sure, and I think tonight is a great conversation between everybody, and that's what I was coming to hear, and glad that you spoke up to say, you know what, we're behind it, and we want it to stay. And the Park and Rec's met last week, and they said the same thing, and I think that's what I, on this board, wanted to hear. Because we weren't gonna just sit up here, or at least I wasn't gonna sit up here and just make an arbitrary decision to tear something down.
If you're hearing from the community that they want a playground to stay there until there's a new one.
Right.
I think that's what I just heard Park and Rec.
That's what we voted last week.
Voted last week.
Right, so I'm sorry that you don't feel that you're
Well,
getting support, but
that
at
we
last
didn't
week's
know. We
meeting.
didn't know you voted that.
Yeah, we did.
We
We
thought we
voted
were
that
waiting
last
for
week.
tonight for the selectmen
No.
to decide,
No.
so.
No.
Thanks. Well,
Sarah,
yes.
can you announce where that meeting is and when it is?
It's in the Cooper Room of the library next Wednesday, October 29th, 7 p.m. All are welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just on the point of Community Preservation Act funding, and that it, and I think you heard that if this is an eligible project, and maybe the Community Preservation Committee has given Park and Rec a limit on what they can spend at a particular location up till now. But I have to say that doesn't stop us from making the request. And the best request that we could make would be to say, we need this much money, and it's in order to match funds that are being raised privately. That's a powerful argument to make. And we only can do that if we're working together, which is what we want to do.
So I think we'll conclude there. I think that, you've already voted to have it stay there. Hopefully with the fundraising, we can.
I think we ought to look at what we can do, like sealing, or something like that, short term. You know, solve some of the short-term stuff while we get the rest of this thing put together.
Well, I think you got a foundation of this report that came out, and if you just follow that report, you should be okay, as far as that inspector.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question pertaining to Keith's CPC?
Sure, Mr. Feen.
Since the group has $50,000 available now, or any, so say we get outside private funds, could those private funds be donated to the town through the CPC,
Yes.
and then we could get the matching funds?
Excellent point, that whatever is privately raised for a project such as this could be, we could time it. We do have an upper limit, we can only, on how it works, but the question is that since the town has accepted the amended version of the Community Preservation Act, which allows us to take local funds, put it in the CPA fund to increase the base for state matching funds. So every dollar you put in, you get a quarter back in state matching funds. That is a great way, if whatever private fundraising is done, if we have that money first put in the community preservation fund for the intended purpose, not for anything else, but for the project you want to do, by putting it in the CDA fund first, then taking it out, put it in, take it out, and the state matches by probably between 25 and 35 cents on the dollar. So that's a great way to augment the funds. So, and yet another reason for us to be working together on that. Great, thanks, Jeff.
Okay, moving on, we're almost exactly on time. What's on the agenda now is the possible establishment, or hopefully the establishment of a Littleton Common Committee. I've received emails and some phone calls about the Common, and the first thing I want to say is that before the discussion starts, this in no way is any reflection or will stop any action that the great work of the Garden Club has done, the great work that hopefully the Legacy Committee will be doing. There is, hopefully, if there's 300th anniversary funds left, after all the bills are paid, that will go to Legacy so they can finish some things they have planned for the Common. My idea of forming this committee is just not the Common itself. If the Common is a focal point for our whole town, it's my hope that we form a committee that goes out and does extensive work to find out. We have some buildings that aren't cared for well. I've talked to owners of certain stores there, and they come right out and tell me that their landlords aren't doing anything. Is there a way that we can talk to them? We have, on Media House Road, we have a building that started to get rebuilt and has stopped. We have vacant buildings, why are they vacant? So there's a number of things that I would hope this committee would take a look at it, including, beautifying the Common and helping, and hopefully having people from the Garden Club and people from Legacy on that committee to be part of it. So that we're all working together on this. But before I give it over to the board, I want to give one person a chance to speak if she wants to, because I talked to Megan Rank a while ago. She wrote a nice email that brought to my attention. It was something I was thinking about a long time and put it on the back burner, but she put a lot of information. She's talked to a lot of people. So Megan, if you'd like to speak on this right now.
We moved to Littleton about 8 years ago, and just have fallen in love with the town and the community, and there's so much that's great about Littleton, and then every now and then you're stopped at Goldsmith and you're just looking straight out, and you just, that view that you're looking at of the buildings and the unkept buildings, it doesn't reflect what a beautiful, what a vibrant community we live in. And I think that I think there's enough talent in this town, I think there's enough interest in this town that we could try, work together somehow to try to tackle some of those issues, like why aren't the property owners maintaining their property? Why aren't businesses coming to Littleton? What can we do? And I think that Common sees a lot of traffic. It's a lot of people's first impression of Littleton is there's an accident on 495, people are routed through, and that's their view of Littleton, and I don't think it reflects what a wonderful community we all call home. And I would love to, and I know that there's a lot of people that would love to volunteer their time and try to tackle some of those issues, and that would mean working with the Legacy Committee, it would mean working with, figuring out how do we develop the Common stuff. There's a lot of issues that we could work on, and I would love to see one established. I think that's the bones of it are good, and I think there's people in this town that would work hard to find out why it's not looking as great as it could. So, I don't know.
One thing I want to point out too, there are some good landlords too, because like the building I'm in, Mr. Tannen takes great care of it, so I didn't mean to say that they're all that way. That's not the case at all.
Yeah.
We have two people right here that are almost sitting on the Common with great landlords to take care of their properties. But I appreciate what you just said. I think it's reflected with a lot of people who talk about it. And And sometimes some of it doesn't get done, or it starts and it slows down and people go to something else because something else came up. Board, anything?
You know, I think it's an issue that has been near and dear to a lot of people's heart. And I think having another committee, to work in collaboration with the Garden Club and with the Legacy and some other folks in town would be a good thing. But the business owners and property owners, those are the folks that really have to be, what's their input? That's the key to bringing that up.
I guess maybe one of the things the committee could look at is try to figure out what requirements they have in other towns. What are requirements that they have for upkeep, and why aren't we seeing some of those requirements here? I don't know.
I think the trick here is writing the charge for the committee and the scope of what they're going to be doing, and their ability to integrate with, like the Legacy Committee and the Garden Club and just to some degree, the Economic Development Committee, and quite a few things. This will not be an easy task, but I think if we're going to do this, we have to give some serious thought to the scope of what we will assign the committee to do on their indefinite terms. And I think at that point it'll be worthwhile. It will create a sounding board for committees and groups, activist groups back and forth. And we may come up with a vision and maybe even a plan that far exceeds what we might have in mind right now, to the better.
I'd make a suggestion to go read and get a copy of the Sewer Feasibility Study Committee and, see what those folks have done. Because they've talked to the owners. They know what the property owners are looking for. And just general, and just not sewering, but I'm talking infrastructure too, What other types of infrastructure needs are there out there, so. It's a big task, but it's a very worthy one for sure.
I think we have to be careful that we don't mire this committee. They should talk to a group like that, but we have to be careful that we don't shackle them with issues that are not easily resolvable.
Nothing's easily resolved. I think that, in the sense beautification of the Littleton Common or the Littleton Common Community Committee, you have to take a look at everything from infrastructure to bylaws, as you said. What bylaws are out there to hold landlords accountable? The overlay district that we've done. It's a big task.
Well, I go back to one thing you said. When we write up the charge, we'll spell out all the different areas that we could go to. We don't even have to specify what committees you should go talk to. Let that committee determine on their own. We should be going here, or we should be going there. Maybe if a lot of people with brand new thoughts is what's needed. Maybe they'll find that they should be going here and there. That gets us some ideas. But I think this is a start. And if it's okay with this board, I'd ask this board to write down some ideas and pass them on to our town administrator so we can work on a charge. Once we have that charge, then open it up for people who want to apply to be on that committee.
So where you'd like to go is a basic, we'll put a committee together and we'll put broad range of a scope for their work, and then they pretty much develop the rest of the charge.
Well, yeah, give them a charge that, at the same time, let them explore maybe things that we didn't even think about too, but we want to be able to.
Don't make it so fun.
Well, one of the ways we could go here is we begin to seek volunteers that want to serve in this committee and have a vision for the common and start to take their input into what their particular vision is. And if we do that, then the committee we form will create its charge.
Okay, you just
Yeah, I think, as the chair said, just have some general bullet points, so to speak, to get to the committee. But again, as Alex, we did it with the, I believe it was the Economic Development Committee. We put the committee together. They came back to us with their charge and their vision, and we approved that based on their meeting, so that will definitely work. But I like Joe's idea about getting some input. We hear from a lot of people, and, to have those voices come to us and kind of put some, here's some good starting points to develop a charge.
So do we want to at least come up with part of a charge first, or do we want to actually put?
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say right now, do we very shortly say we are looking for volunteers to be in this committee?
Well, I think
we do that once we adopt, we're
Once we
going to form the
commit,
committee.
yeah, put it up
We
for
ask right
30
away
days.
for help.
Okay.
Yeah. And once we make those appointments, maybe we can have those bullet points or ideas that this board came up with, so that they can see what the vision of this board or the charge of this board would be, and then they can take it and develop it and.
Let them run with it.
Correct. Correct.
Anything
That's my
else,
opinion.
anything else from the public?
I'm Joe Ficacello, and I agree with you. We've been communicating somewhat. And I think that probably the most important thing is that it needs to serve the community in Littleton. And we're such a diverse place that I think, we need to ask the town, what does the downtown mean to you? Like, what would bring you down there? What can we put there that would bring you down there? And I'm sure we're not going to get, we're just going to have hundreds of different answers. And that's great, and I think that's probably the starting point, for me anyways, in looking at it, is, I don't see the common itself as a problem, like the aesthetics of the common. I think that's why I think it's got a lot of potential. It's the use of the common. I don't have any reason really to go down there, except for driving through there. And I would love to have a reason to stop and spend some time there and see other people from outside the town come in too, which is important. But I think, it's our town. It's our town common. And that's, to me, and looking at this, what we need to do, where a good starting point is. And yes, there are all these other things to look at, but it's so wide open right now that, we got to figure out what does the town want there. Thank you. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's a good potential, a lot of potential.
Right. I think we'll draw something up and ask for people to put in their applications, and Keith was, as far as people who want to apply, do we break that up first?
If you want to establish the committee and invite applications for it, then we can, we would do that for a month and then schedule a meeting.
So we can vote tonight to actually establish.
Yeah, you could vote to establish it if you, if there, didn't know if there were any particular groups you wanted to be sure to include, sometimes town boards, sometimes other civic groups or something. If not, you could just generally invite applications from the public, from the interested public.
Well, I'd be more apt this time to leave it wide open to get different ideas.
Yeah. Make sure that, we specifically invite the other boards and committees for input into this, but not necessarily ask them for membership yet.
Ready? All right. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to establish a Littleton Common Committee to advise the Board of Selectmen regarding the preservation and enhancement of the Littleton Common and surrounding properties. Said committee to be comprised of representatives from the general public and anybody else.
Well, why don't we say representatives yet to be determined?
Representatives yet to be determined.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for meeting with me that day. That was a good meeting. So one quick question, would we just fill out the general application if we were interested in this? The town.
Why, do you think you're going to apply?
Better. For indefinite term.
Even if you don't, we're going to draft
We already have your letter of application earlier this year.
From last May.
Thank you.
November 12th, 2014, special town meeting, article recommendations. We were looking at 3 that we hadn't actually spoken on, being Article 6, Article 7, and Article 8. Article 6?
Yeah, Article 6, and actually, before I get to those, just that I wanted to call to your attention, there are 2 other, there are 2 memos in the packet for this agenda item, both from Bonnie. One, both have to do with financial articles that you've already adopted recommendations on, but just to update you to some questions that had come up at the Finance Committee. One was a question about a proposed funding source for line item transfers for the fiscal 2015 budget. We're proposing to use money that is in the debt service budget but is not being used for debt service. It was our projection of what we thought we'd need to cover short-term interest costs. The actual amount that we need, because our bond rating is lower, is less. So there's money that's just going to sit there. We're not going to spend it. And it's never been used to cover debt service. So it doesn't, in Finance Department's opinion, doesn't violate the policy that says you can't use retired debt to pay for operating budgets. That it's, Bonnie wants to.
Sure. The policy provides that any reductions in debt service be used to pay only for capital, not be allowed to go to the operating budget. Debt service as defined by the Department of Revenue means placed debt, so it's bonded debt that's already on a financing schedule. And that's what we have been doing for a number of years in practice. What we are proposing is to use the short-term debt, which the Department of Revenue defines as short-term borrowing terms of less than a year. We use this for roadway planning. We use it for other issuances of projects that have not been placed in a long-term debt fashion as of yet. So under both of the Department of Revenue's definitions and our own policy definitions, the use of the short-term interest would not violate the financial policies that we have in place right now. The short-term debt account is a fluid account. Again, roadway planning is an integral part of that. We weren't sure how much debt we were going to place for the roadway plans that we had in the process in the spring. We know now what we're going to be placing. The interest rates are much more favorable over the last year. So this is not anything that will hamper the operating budget or violate the policy. We can certainly firm up, definitions in the policy if that's the desire of the group.
But the question that FinCom asked was, on its face, it says moving from the debt service budget to other budgets, and did that violate the policy? And the answer we're going back to FinCom with is no, it doesn't, and therefore we can do the transfer.
Correct.
Which we would like to do because we've got a number of things we'd like to cover, including the veterans assessment, the veterans benefits budget has gone up. We actually get 75% reimbursement a year from now for that expense. So anyway. The other update on the finance budget article had to do with the capital projects. There are 3 capital projects totaling $287,000, I think, in Article 3. Those 3 are $50,000 for updating the master plan, $35,000 for the Elder and Human Services Needs Assessment, and $212,000 for to go towards the fuel facility project.
248.
Yeah, it will be 248 by the time we're done.
Right.
The article is posted at 2:12.
Right.
The issue, the question that FinCom rightly asked is, all right, is that enough to complete the project? And the answer turns out to be no, that we do have 300,000 from the light commissioners. And we had 200, and Bonnie had 212,000 that she would allow us to have, that she would allow us to use. After you spend the 50 and the 35, all that's left under the levy limit is the 212. So we put that in there. However, the amount that we need is 248. So what we are going to do is go back to FinCom tomorrow night and with the proposal that we fully fund the fuel facility replacement by increasing the 212 to the higher number, by taking that difference, is it 36 or 38?
36,000, just.
Yes. To take that out of the increment for the master plan update. That doesn't mean that we're not going to do the master plan update, because we've already got $100,000 on account, and even the 50,000 wasn't going to be enough to get it done. So it means that we'd have to, we're planning on going to get more money for the master plan update in May. We'll just get a larger sum then. It's not going to impede the master plan update, but by making sure that we have enough money for the fuel facility replacement now, that will allow us the day after town meeting to accept the bid that we're holding to do the replacement. So.
And we would have presented it in this manner with all truthfulness if we had had the final engineering numbers and the final costs at the time that you voted to insert it.
So we want to make that substitute. FinCom was concerned that if we were only partially funding the fuel facility replacement, we needed to say where we were going to pay for all the total cost. So we would come by shifting the funds within the total of Article 3.
Part A to Part C.
Right.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, Mr. Higley.
The $50,000 for the master plan, what was the purpose of that initially? And now that we're backing away from that?
Yeah, we've already appropriated $100,000 at the annual town meeting in May, at which time we said this was the down payment on a project that we think is going to cost $250,000. So the thought was that since we seem to have maybe $50,000 that we could use in November, put that aside, put it in the account for master plan update. Turns out that we've got a more immediate need for those funds. We weren't going to be spending the master plan money in its, before this May town meeting anyway. So we would be coming back to the May town meeting in any event for supplemental funding for the master plan.
So it just so happened we had $50,000 and we just were going to put it towards the master plan? That was the initial goal?
That's all we were trying to accomplish initially for this November. That looked like the money was there, so let's make a stab at putting some more money aside. We'll be back. So if there's no objection, we'll proceed with those financial matters and bring them back to the Finance Committee for tomorrow. Tomorrow night is the deadline for submitting the town meeting report booklet to the printers, and so after the FinCom meeting tomorrow night, I'll make any final changes in your recommendations and send it off to the printer so that we can get the hard copies made and put in people's mailboxes and for 2 weeks prior to town meeting. So that brings us to the 3 articles that the board has not adopted recommendations on. Article 6, 7, and 8. Article 6 is the appropriation of mitigation funds from the 15 Great Road Project into the Community Preservation Fund Recreation Reserve. The purpose of so doing was twofold. Number one, it was to take advantage of the opportunity to get state matching funds. If we put local funds into the CPA fund first, that act gets you whatever the matching rate is for CPA funds. The determination of the rate would be made next October, in the next state matching fund round, but we're guesstimating it will be somewhere between 25 and 35%. Last year it was 50%, that was a one-time anomaly. We haven't seen what the number is yet this year. I don't think the state has announced it. But we could get between 25 and 35 cents on the dollar for every dollar you put in the fund. So it's worth doing. The funding source is first the $100,000 that the planning board had obtained as mitigation funds for the Orchard subdivision next to 15 Great Road. That $100,000 is specifically for active recreation. That was the purpose that the planning board prescribed, and so that's what its use would be. We also have in hand right now another $250,000 from the same developer, which is unrestricted. It could be used for any purpose. And this article proposes to take $100,000 of that remaining balance and also put it in the CPA fund for purposes of active recreation. So the idea to do this came, as we discussed at length a couple of meetings ago, came as a response to the citizen petition in Article 7, where at the time $200,000 was sought for turf fields design. That's what 150 or so registered voters have asked that we do. The Permanent Municipal Building Committee is reviewing two proposals that were received from engineering design firms, one for under $100,000, the other for under $200,000. And we'll have a recommendation, Jeff, Wednesday night is your committee is meeting, and probably it's going to be the lower of in the range of the lower number, rather than the higher one. So in round numbers, we're thinking under $100,000 perhaps. That
100,000.
Yeah, say 100,000. We'll round it off. So instead of 200, it would be 100 that's needed in Article 7. Just to mention, whether Article 7 becomes what the funding source is in Article 7 requires some level of cooperation with the Community Preservation Committee. They are the gatekeeper for the use of CPA funds. If the intent is to take out, is to fund Article 7 with the money that's been put in Article 6, you need a majority vote of the Community Preservation Committee to take it out in Article 7. The CPC has a meeting later in the month,
October 28th.
October
Next
28th.
Tuesday.
So we'll be monitoring that as well. The request for funds that will be made to the CPC will match the PBC's recommendation. So if you say it should be 100, the petitioners are not going to be requesting 200. They'll be requesting 100 from the Community Preservation Committee. And we had the CPC, I'll look on the bright side, we had the CPC here with us a couple of weeks ago, and they took the first step to say that the turf fields project is eligible for CPA funding. So they've done that much. On Article 7, we don't have tonight in front of us a recommendation of what number should be moved in Article 7. We don't have the concurrence of the petitioners of what number they're going to be asking for. We will have that the next time we meet, but it will be after this document goes to publication. We'll have time before town meeting to adopt the number in Article 7. Don't think that we're in a position to do it tonight until PNBC adopts its number, and then to have the Community Preservation Committee take its action, so that we can follow those steps. What we do have, though, tonight is Article, if the board chooses, is Article 6, which is the article that you've submitted along with the planning board to move funds into the CPA fund. So we can have a discussion about if you want to hold off on doing this until you know what the deal is with Article 7, or whether you want to take any action tonight on Article 6.
I think one of the things that I look at is Article 6 a good idea, no matter what happens on the future of Article 7? And we've heard a compelling case tonight that even if we did this and by some means the town decided not to fund the turf field, we certainly have a use for this money as designated for active recreation. So I think it makes sense financially, and I think it makes sense that it can stand alone, whether we know exactly where we are with Article 7 or not.
Well, personally, I think it makes sense anyway, because the CPC will end up having the additional money that comes from the state anyway, so.
Makes sense.
You get 50 to, Article 6 gets you $50,000 to $70,000 for doing nothing. So
Yeah,
that's a
we've
good
got
deal.
money.
Yeah.
It's a good return on investment.
Yeah.
So would you like to recommend this?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support the following article and direct the preparation of the motions to be moved and seconded by said board, specifically Article 6, Board of Selectmen, Planning Board appropriate into community preservation $200,000 for active recreation.
Moved and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The next one, just like you said, we don't act on it because we don't have the.
Your next meeting will be on November 3rd, and by that time, we will know what PNC and CPC have done, so you could adopt, I hope they will evolve, will be on the same page, and so that the board can take its motion and recommend consistent with those two boards.
Keith, can we also bring up the discussion that we had at FinCom about this, because we haven't voted on that one either, but some of the concern is, and I'm not posted here, so I'm just relaying things that happened at the other meeting, was that as we talk about the next step and whether it's 100,000 or 200,000, it's really $1.5 million or $1 million to $1.5 million. And so I just want to make sure the discussion is really the big discussion and not, we need 100,000 to do this. Yes, we do, but if we do this, then the real cost is $1 million or $1.5 million. But I just want to make sure we're having a full disclosure discussion as we go forward on this.
Yeah, regarding Article 7, the concern was.
Do me a favor, though.
Yeah.
When you address it through the chairman first, not through the town administrator.
Well, okay, I apologize for that, but we had the original discussion at the FinCom meeting last week, so I apologize, Joe.
Which leads us to Article number 8, and if it's okay with the rest of the board, this has to do with the tax incentive financing for 3 Distribution Way. We have found out that we can go into executive session to discuss this, so I would suggest that we talk about the election warrant and the minutes first, and then go to executive session and not come out and
Yeah, I agree.
So, 8B, election warrant.
Before we go there, would our intent be to come out into open session again if we are going to support?
No.
So we'll do that on November next
Yeah,
meeting?
right.
Okay.
We will not be in a position to adopt a recommendation on
Okay.
Article 8 tonight.
All right.
We will be just discussing the strategy regarding the TIF agreement.
I'm on board with that.
Okay. So 8B, election warrant.
Take an election warrant.
Just need a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to execute the warrant for the state general election to be held Tuesday, November 4th, 2014, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., Charles Forbes K. Gymnasium, Littleton Middle School, 55 Russell Street, to direct the constable post said warrant forthwith.
Seconded.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Brings us to minutes from October 6th.
I wasn't here. Look good.
Looks good. Move that the Board of Selectmen approve meeting minutes from session held October 6th.
I was absent.
Second. Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That's taken care of. Now, how to word the executive session.
Just add the word "no."
Gotcha. All right, move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A, Clause 6, to go into an executive session to consider the value of real property, since an open meeting may have detrimental effect to the board's negotiating position for a tax increment financing agreement for 3 Distribution Circle, Center Circle, and not to convene an open session thereafter.
Second. It's been moved in second, roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. We're going into executive session.